Welcome, Kalimera. Ron Allen here, speaking as a member of West Street Christian Church, bringing the ninth in a series called Emergency Literature, the Gospel of Mark, under the supposition that Mark wrote this gospel for a church about 40 years after the resurrection, a church that was itself in a time of emergency because of the Roman invasion of Jerusalem, destruction of the temple, much of Jerusalem, and rending apart many of the threads that held together Jewish society and economic life. Mark's congregation, followers of Jesus, felt like they were in an emergency, trying to figure out what to do and where to go. And this story we're going to look at tonight contributes in a significant way. It is a familiar story, the stilling of the storm, and yet it has an unusual dimension to it. If not unusual, a dimension that few of us notice because it's not on the surface of the story. But as it begins, Mark 4:35, on that day when evening had come, he said to them, "Let us go to the other side." Evening, in many associations in antiquity, evening and night were fearful times. Not only could you not see clearly, but many people believe that that was a time when the demons were out and when thieves broke in to steal. So just the fact that this is nighttime has about it a kind of fearful quality. When Jesus says they were going to the other side, this sounds like a simple geographical designation, but we have to remember that they got into the boat on the Jewish side of the lake, and they were going across the lake to get out on the Gentile side. And wherever Jesus and the disciples go, they are agents, witnesses, prophets of the coming realm of God. The news that God is on the way to wrapping up this broken life and moving toward a new world, the realm of God, which would be characterized by love, peace, justice, equality, egalitarianism, abundance, freedom, and life. So they are taking this mission, they are taking this message to the Gentiles, who are a people who live amongst idols and according to the values and promises, practices of the old age. And as they are traveling, they leave the crowd behind and they take Jesus with them in the boat, just as he was. He's there the whole time. Other boats were with them, and that's a way for Mark to verify the truthfulness of this account because it was a public event. It wasn't something that just happened to Jesus and the disciples. Other people saw it. A great windstorm arose, and waves beat into the boat so that the boat was already being swamped. Now you can feel this, can't you? You can feel the storm. You can feel the wind. You can feel the waves boiling up and breaking over into the boat. And no wonder they are anxious. You know what it's like to feel like you're being swamped. And there's another dimension here. Not only is this a geographical indication, but also draws on the commonplace practice in antiquity of associating storms with chaos, destruction, and threat. Of course, water has many positive associations in the ancient world, cleansing, life, refreshment. But here we have a storm. And the storm in the boat is a symbol for Mark of the storm in which his church found itself. In the turmoil after the destruction of the temple, it feels like they are in a storm, like they are under lightning, that the wind is blowing against them, that the waves are flooding into their church and they are in danger of being swamped. I think a lot of people feel that way today, that it's as if we're in a storm when so much of what we have found to be familiar and taken for granted has been changed. And there is still a certain unknown quality about the future. I know people, I'll bet you do too, who feel like they are being swamped. And now Mark tells us Jesus was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. What is this? Doesn't he care? Why is he asleep? And there is a twofold answer, one part of which is easy, and the other part of which is a little surprising. The easy part is to remember that in much of the first 39 books of the Bible, sleep is a sign of trust in God. So here in the midst of the storm, battering the boat, Jesus indicates his trust by sleeping. But the other element goes back to something Jesus said to the disciples in Mark 3, where he told them that they have authority over things like this. He has given them the power to deal with these storms, and they are not taking advantage of what he has given them. So they wake him up and say to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" And in the back of the reader's mind, in the back of the listener's mind, there is the memory that Jesus had given them the authority to take care of situations like this. But he wakes up, rebukes the wind, and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." Earlier, Mark had emphasized, and he was in the boat with them. That's Mark's way of reminding them that Jesus, in his risen presence, was with Mark's church in the years 40 after the resurrection. And here, Jesus does what he has given them the power to do, which is to calm their storm. This is a reminder on the part of Mark that this power is still resident in the church, and that Jesus will work through those who follow him. Then the wind ceased, and there was a dead calm. And he asks them, "Why were you afraid? I told you I'm here, and I told you you have power. Have you still no faith?" This is consistent with something I mentioned early in our time together, which is that Mark often paints the disciples in a negative way as a way of prompting Mark's church to reflect on the degree to which they might be like the disciples in not being as bold, as venturesome, as faithful as Jesus wants. And this question is a part of that picture. They were filled with great awe, that's religious awe, and said to one another, "Who then is this that even the wind and the sea obey him?" Why do the disciples ask that question when they have already been with him 4 chapters and he has revealed it clearly? It's because in Mark's picture of the disciples, they have not quite got it yet, but that did not prevent Jesus from acting in their behalf, and it did not prevent Mark from emphasizing that Jesus is still in the community in that same way. I feel like I'm in a storm. I'm sure some of you feel like you are in a storm, but this story is here to tell us two things. Number one, Jesus is still with us in his resurrected power in the same way that he is with these disciples in the boat, so we can make it. And number two, this story reminds us that in the midst of the storm, we have agency, we have power, we can do things. I can't turn a tornado around, but there are things I can do when I remember and have faith in the power of the risen Jesus in the boat with us.